whoever is joining us out there on those, I don't know, like internet waves. I am Lucy Gellman, and I am back with Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Arts Respond is a collaboration between WNHH and the Arts Council of Greater New Haven, and I am super excited to be back on this like gray and wet and kind of dreary Friday at the end of what feels like the longest week ever in human history with Chasity Kennedy. We are talking about something joyful. We need that right now. Life in Color, Hair Story, an interactive fashion production, which will celebrate the journey, excuse me, of loving Black and brown hair through art, storytelling, and high fashion this Sunday, February 2nd, at the Lab at Concorp. If you, I don't know, like have been living under a rock and you haven't heard of the Lab, it's at 245 Moore Street, which is in Hamden, sort of right over the New Haven Hamden border. And we're going to talk about that and Chastity's journey to Hair Story and to like all of your creative pursuits. So Chastity, welcome to Arts Respond. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to share my story with everyone.
So before we talk about Hair Story, which is, I'm sure for you front of mind as you're like you've gotten to the like T minus almost 48 hours, right?
Yes.
Um, so before we get to that, I want to talk about who you are, who Chastity is. So take me back, right, to baby you, right? I'm not going to say young you because you're still young. Um, and how you became really interested in creativity, arts, and culture.
Okay, so I have always been into business. I grew up in a business owned type of family. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. My mom owns a hair salon, and my dad, he owns a contracting business. So I've always been like business prone. Um, when I was young, like in middle school, I used to take like index cards and make business cards out of them and like sell little like bracelets that I'll make and little arts and craft things I would make. And so like that's just like a little bit of about me. Like I feel like I was always kind of prone to want to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really think of it as like a career path, you know. I always thought of like school and just, staying in school and going that route was the only way I could, succeed. But growing up, I ended up going to my first fashion show ever, my junior year of high school, and I was so amazed. um, I ended up throwing on my own fashion show just as like a little cute little way to show creativity for my senior year of high school, not really thinking of it as, like an actual career. Um, but then unfortunately, I failed out of college my first year, and I was feeling like I went through like a whole identity crisis, feeling like, oh, I can't do this. But that kind of pushed me to fall back on my passions and really just tap into which is a creative eye and just like that business mindset I always had naturally. So, um, yeah, that's a little bit about how I started Chassis and these productions.
And did you see, I'm really interested. So you grew up in Bridgeport, right?
Yes, I
Um,
did.
And I'm interested, I feel like young people usually don't know the term entrepreneur, but they can describe what it is. And I even feel like the term entrepreneur or entrepreneur is way more popular now than it was even 5 years ago, let
Yes.
alone 2 decades ago. But did you like feel that energy, especially from your mom?
Right. So when I was young, of course, I didn't really think of what I was doing as a business. Like this is just me trying to tap into creative energy and things that I was already interested in, and seeing my mom, I just thought of her, just going to work and coming back home and like providing for us, both my parents, not really thinking of it like, oh yeah, they own their own business. They built this business up to be successful. So as I got older, I really um, learned from them. And I feel like I really understood better how a business really is ran instead of it just being like, hey, they just woke up one day and their business was perfect, and they were able to have a clientele. So yeah, like when I was younger, of course, I didn't really think of what I was doing as entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship. So yeah, I agree with you. It definitely has become popular after COVID and everybody started their businesses. And yeah, so I definitely agree.
And also for you, was hair always like, did it always feel like a touch point? Because I think across the country, but in Connecticut, in New Haven, and Bridgeport, and actually across the state, we have been having more, I think, like vital and necessary conversations about hair and specifically Black women's hair in the
Mm-hmm.
past several years. You have someone like Robin Porter, who's been such a champion of the Crown Act when she was in the state legislature. Um, and so for you, did you feel like that was a touch point or an entry point that you were really interested in, especially as it intersects with fashion?
Right. So honestly, no, because like when I was younger, my mom does hair. So obviously, like hair to me was just like, oh yeah, this is just every day. I'm used to it. So I wasn't really interested in hair. I never wanted to be like a hairstylist or anything like that. Um, but I have my own hair story, and I feel like the reason why I really wanted to highlight hair in this show is because I feel like everybody has a hair story, and I really wanted to tell it in a way where everybody can relate. Um, we all have like, especially in the Black and brown community, I feel like we all have this journey with our hair of going through a love and hate relationship, especially with society and how society views our hair, our natural hair, and the natural styles we do. So it's becoming more popular now because I feel like our people are really coming into like a self reclamation, and they're loving themselves and loving their hair and showing it off to the world. So I felt like it was the perfect time to tell that story.
So I want to talk about the story we're telling on Sunday, but you said something that I love. I love personal stories. I think that when we tell our stories, we understand each other better, and when we do that, we move past a lot of the nastiness that's sort of dividing us, right, and getting in the
Right.
way.
Yeah.
And you said you have your own personal story, and so if you are open to sharing it, I know for some folks they keep that close to the vest. Um, I would love to hear that and for our reader or our listener, excuse me, to hear that too.
Yes, I'm so open to sharing. So growing up, although like I had a mom who was a hairstylist, and very much embraced natural hair, I felt like I was prone to like straightening my hair and conforming to, I feel like, society standards, because I grew up in I went to a private school, and a lot of my friends had like straight hair. They could go in the water, they could just get their hair wet and it doesn't curl up. So I really wanted that for myself, and I kind of hated my hair in a sense, um, but I didn't really know how to describe it. So I just kept straightening my hair and doing things to my hair, like dyeing it and just damaging my hair, just to get this look that I want that I'll never have. You know what I mean? So I feel like growing up, I was able to, like, through loving myself, I cut my hair. I rocked like an afro mohawk type look for a few years, and then I decided to grow my hair back, and like it's just like the versatility of our hair is just so beautiful. So I came to just fully embrace what I have naturally, and now I rock my fro any and everywhere, even to like interviews or anything like that, just because I don't feel like it's unprofessional or like unkept. You know what I mean? So I came to love myself and my hair fully.
Was there a moment, was there a specific moment, or for you, was it more gradual? I've talked to some folks who are like, I woke up and I knew, right? Uh,
Yeah,
some people for whom it's like a 10-year journey.
right. So honestly, it was a few years. Like I feel like as a baby, of course, I wasn't really thinking about my hair, and then I got into middle school, right? And I felt like, oh, I'm starting to notice that I want my hair a certain way. You get what I mean? So through middle school and like I would say like a couple years of high school, like my first 2 years of high school, I really was in like feeling like putting myself down about my hair. You get what I mean? Um, so I feel like once I went to that fashion show, I'm not gonna say that's the reason why, but that fashion show and other events like that and other people that I've met in my life that, just rock their hair out. I'm like, yeah, this is something I could do. My hair is just as beautiful. Um, so I just came to love it. And I feel like cutting my hair also helped me to manage my hair and learn how to love it. So then now that I have more bigger hair, I'm able to manage it and still love it the same way. You get what I mean? So it came gradually. It wasn't an overnight thing for me.
And tell me, you've talked a little bit about it, but tell me about this fashion show specifically, because some people go and they're like, great, that was awesome, good time. I'm gonna put it behind me. And clearly this stayed with you.
Yes. So I well, for hair story, well, for all my shows, I'm just gonna talk in general. All of my shows, I try to tell a message and try to leave an impact because I feel like I have a platform and I want to use it for to spread positivity and love and information and educate our community. So every show it has a different meaning and it has a purpose. So I feel like that's why I was able to stick with what I'm doing because I'm able to lead with my why and lead with my purpose with everything that I do. And it's not ever feeling like, like I'm forcing or it's just fake or anything like that. Everything has substance. So I'm like thrilled to do it every single time instead of it being like a drag and I'm just going to put it behind me. So that's really what keeps me going.
And let's also talk about, so I feel like you're having this internal like reckoning with yourself, thinking about how you want to present your image, thinking about the fact that you don't have to cater to other beauty standards. And it sounds like specifically there was a moment when you sort of broke out of like conventional Western and often very white when we're talking about like long straight hair beauty standards.
Yes.
Um, and so you're having this own moment, and also you're moving into being an entrepreneur yourself. And I would love to talk about the founding and genesis of CAP Productions. Oh, sorry, CAK Productions.
So it is CA Productions.
CA, I'm
Um,
so sorry.
no, you
I
are
did
so.
not have enough coffee this morning.
It's okay, girl. I fun little side story. I definitely chose to use my middle name instead of my last name because I feel like it sounds so much more artsy. Like when you hear Chasity Kennedy, you think of like President Kennedy. So I wanted to use my middle name because I feel like Anise is just so it's so catchy. So just a little side side story on
And
that.
it's unique. I think it's pretty unique.
Yes, definitely. My dad did
Yeah.
his big one, giving me that middle name.
Okay, Dad, we love dads.
Right. Can you remind me the question? I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize. So yeah, so can you tell me about the genesis of this? Because I think it takes a lot of, first of all, it takes a lot of courage just to like exist as a woman in the world, right? Let's name that, especially at the end of this week. Um,
Right.
uh,
Exactly.
Especially if you live at any intersection that has been and still is, especially under this current administration, um, still historically marginalized. So that is one part of it. But then also just the genesis of CA Productions.
Um, I feel like that is a tough question. The genesis of CA Productions.
I guess for you, was there a moment when you were like, I'm going to do this? Because it also, when I talk to entrepreneurs, I have such tremendous respect because
Right.
I think to decide that you are going to pursue your own thing, whether or not you have a side hustle, which is that's letting you pay your rent, right?
Right.
Um, it's really brave. It's really, especially in the culture and society we live in, where you often have to be cobbling multiple things together.
Right. No, I feel like my point in which I felt like I could do this was when I put on my first show. Um, Not even the high school one, because that was just like a play, play show. But my first production ever, it was a completely sold out show. Everybody came out to support. They were super excited, and it was people that didn't even care about fashion. You know what I mean? So I felt like I could leave an impact, um, just from, and my first show ever was not really something with substance. It was mainly about just colors. It was called Vibrance. It wasn't really like too too developed yet, but the fact that I could touch so many people in the audience, um it made me feel like, hey, I could do this again and better and with a purpose this time. And that's I feel like that's when when CAP really became CAP.
Yeah, and tell me about the growth of it. And for you, when was the show versus now? It's 20, I keep thinking it's 2024, but it's 2025. So,
Yes.
so how long have you been nurturing and growing this thing?
Yeah, so my first show, Vibrance Fashion Show, was August 2019, in Bridgeport. And I did just a straight runway. It started off as just straight runway, no coaching involved, just trying to show off the clothes. And then I started to develop experience through my own modeling career, walking fashion weeks, walking different shows, and seeing how the industry really is. And I was able to bring that education and what I've learned to the models now. So I've developed as a coach. I've developed over the years. We do formations now. It's not just a straight runway. You're gonna see the models on different parts of the runways. You never know where they're gonna go. So it keeps the audience on their toes. And now we also have a message, instead of it just being a fashion show. So we've grown so much. And I actually have a team now. I used to do everything by myself, which was so tough. But
It's so
I have
hard.
a team now. Yeah, I have a team now, with two other beautiful women, Muma and Melissa Matthews, and they are amazing. I love them down. They always come through for me. So just having those other two creative minds to work with my mind as well, I feel like it's grown the brand in different ways as well.
So I just want to remind listeners, if you're just hopping on with us here at WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven, or if you've been hanging out with us on the airwaves, this is Arts Respond. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman, and I am here with Chasity Kennedy. We are talking about Life in Color, Hair Story, and Interactive Fashion Production that will be held on Sunday, February 2nd at the Lab at Concorp. That's at 245 Moore Street in Hamden, right over the New Haven Hampton border, if you don't know. Now you do know. So, so I want to also go back to something that I think you said briefly. You mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic, and
Mhm.
I want to acknowledge COVID is still with us, but it's at a very different phase than it was
Right.
in early 2020. And so, of course, you start this thing in 2019, and then the world shutters effectively in
Yes.
March 2020. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, for a lot of artists, for a lot of sort of like folks who were trying to press ahead with different expressions of culture, it was a really difficult period. And
Yes,
so for
definitely.
you, tell me about sort of what CA Productions, what changes happened during that time? Was it a period of reflection for you? Some artists are like, actually, the pandemic was great because I had to slow down and think. And
Yes.
others are like, no, I lost all my work and I had to go work for a banking firm and it really sucked.
Oh no. For me, I feel like COVID, because I had two businesses at the time, when COVID first did its thing. So I had a cosmetics line, as well as CAP. So of course during the pandemic, I could not put on productions at all. Nobody was able to leave the house, and I was a little stressed, not gonna lie, because I felt like I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I one of my main things for CAP, like one of the main things that I promoted was the fact that I do biannual fashion productions. So I'm like, dang, I just put on my first two shows, and now this happened. Now I can't put on another one. So I felt really like hard on myself. But luxury was, which is my cosmetics brand, was taking off at the time because people couldn't really leave their houses to get cute stuff for themselves. So I was like that person to bring lashes to all the girls out there that wanted them. Um, so it was like kind of a 50-50. Like it was a plus, but it also was a negative, for me. But then once we got back into the flow of like putting productions back on, it kind of forced us to take safety protocols we never would have, like making people get tested, things like that, making sure everybody's safe. So that was a good thing, making sure, because sometimes people plan to come to the show and then they find out they have COVID, they didn't even know it. So it was a good and bad thing for CAP.
And tell me about moving forward and putting together Hair Story because it's such a, production. I'm looking right now at a release that you sent me earlier this week, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like almost a dozen designers, right? There are going to be guest performances from Nia Joy, Olivia Summerfield, Pax the Collector, Alicia Cobb. You really have this like jam-packed, beautiful lineup for the event.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, so I pride myself on, not just being a fashion show, but a fashion production. So we try to really tap into and showing off like all different types of art. So putting together the show, I really wanted to, of course, showcase hair. Having a bunch of different hair artists come out that do extravagant hair pieces and different things with hair. But aside from that, I wanted the designers to have a message to tell. So we will go through three different parts in this show. First part will be Playground Crowns, and that is highlighting our childhood, the nostalgia of getting our hair done by either like a grandmother, a mother, going to the salon, going to the barbershop, little bobos, barrettes. So we're highlighting just nostalgia and childhood through that first part. And then we go into the second part. It's called Masked by Man. And that is just how societal standards kind of kind of affect our community and kind of either make us conform to the standard or break the standard. So we are going to showcase that through fashion, through hair, and then the last scene is Roots Reclaimed, and I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory, but just coming into our own self and claiming our hair as part of our identity and loving it. So you'll see a variety of different acts and performances just to tell that story.
And tell me about, what you are hoping for yourself, for the folks involved, and then also for the folks who come.
Yes, so for myself, I'm really hoping to just run a successful show, have fun, make sure everybody's having fun. And for everybody involved, I hope that they can take this message that we're showcasing off home with them and able to share the message with other people, and hopefully it could change a couple lives, make a couple people who might not fully love their hair embrace it. Um, so that's my main goal.
Yeah, is this something you find yourself now, like now that you're in it, right? Talking about a lot outside of your creative pursuits as well?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely talk about CAP with, anybody I come into contact with. Um, and I'm a teacher outside of CAP. So I bring it to my students, I bring it to my coworkers. So I'll definitely will have everybody who, is in my life outside of my career, they're going to be there to support, you know.
I want to talk about your work as a teacher too, because I think educating young people is you are doing God's work. And I like truly, truly mean that. I think there are very few professions that are as important. Um, and so for you, first of all, I want to, well, actually not first of all, but I want to talk about the balance of it because it is a balancing act. But for you, did you always know that you were interested in nurturing other folks through education?
Not at all. I wanted to be a doctor. I was such a STEM girly growing up. I
You
love
still have
science.
time? There's
Girl. I will never. I commend doctors and I definitely respect them, but that is a whole nother level of schooling that I'm just not ready for. But I definitely grew up wanting to be a biomedical engineer, which is very random. Um, but I ended up taking the path of my passion. Um, but for teaching, I am a pair, so I'm not like the teacher or the head teacher of the class, but I kind of fell into teaching by accident, honestly, because I over the summer I was working in an office and they actually during COVID they went down. They were not allowing us to come into the office, so I was out of work. And my friend had told me about an agency where you could go into the schools and help the kids, and just assisting. But I ended up falling in love. I was teaching kindergarten for a few years, and then there was a kid who had he had special needs, so he was in our class, and I fell in love with him. So I decided to take the path of nurturing kids with special needs and behavioral issues. Um, so yeah, I definitely am still trying to find that balance between work and uh, my passion. But I love every second of it, every step of the way, and every day I see growth in my students. So it's a blessing, but it's also a job for real. It's not easy.
I also want to ask about how you linked up with Concorp and the lab specifically because they have done work around around hair stories in the past, around talking about the Crown Act, and then of course fashion.
Right.
They for a couple of years have done a big fashion show that's also like a back to school backpack drive. So it's great in August. So tell me about linking up with them. It seems so mission aligned.
Yes, it's perfect. I honestly I wasn't expecting it. So Melissa, my backstage manager, she lives in New Haven, so she's heavily connected with Concorp, and she's always at the events and stuff like that. So she was our linking, like she was the person that connected us, and I appreciate it so much because they are amazing and what they do for the community. I just totally, I'm an advocate for it. So I'm excited for future collaborations, um, and future events possibly with them.
And I also want to ask a little bit more about this balancing act. So you are pouring so much into everyone and everything around you. How are
Yes.
you taking care of you, especially right now? Because I know
Oh,
like we all need to be drinking our water and getting sleep and all the things, right?
yes. Yes. So that is a really good question. I am still, like I said, finding that balance. One thing about me, I'm gonna get my sleep though. So I definitely I definitely am caught up on rest and I drink my water, but I definitely do this year. Like one of my things on my vision board is to really just focus on me and my self-care, self-love, like just getting like little massages or going to the spa, little things like that. Is things I tend to put off because I'm so focused on the next production and the next day at work or anything like that. So yeah, I definitely this year I'm going to focus on me. I'm not going to play about me this year.
I love that. So, for folks who might just be joining us here on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven, this is Arts Respond, a collaboration with the Arts Council. And I am your host, Lucy Gellman, and I'm here with Chastity Kennedy of CA Productions. And we are talking about Life in Color, Hair Story, and Interactive Fashion Production that will take place on Sunday, February 2nd at 3 p.m. at the lab at Concorp. So, what can folks, I don't want you to give too much away. I don't love spoilers, right?
Right.
Um, I guess tell me a little bit more about the messages that you're hoping that folks take home with them. You mentioned that sort of in passing, but I would
Right.
love to talk a little bit more about that. And, for you, when you're not wearing your entrepreneur hat, is this a conversation that you're also having with the women in your life or like just with the
Mhm.
folks in your life more generally?
Yes. So, um, to answer the first question, I definitely want people to just if for people who's not a part of the Black and Brown community, right? I want them to understand, like, have a different level of understanding because we are showcasing every part of the hair story, so for the people outside of the Black and Brown community, definitely the message I want them to take home is just an understanding of, you know, how our hair is a part of our identity and how that affects us on an everyday basis. Um, and then for the people who are a part of our community, just I want them to relate. It's not too much about forcing people to like want to rock an afro, because I'm not saying that if you don't want to wear your afro out, that's wrong. Every style and everything we do with our hair is a part of us. So I definitely want people to just relate, and like, even if it's just one scene, they like look at an outfit and they're like, oh my gosh, I remember those bobos, like getting those bobos done in my hair as a kid. Or if they see like a gown and they remember wearing it, at the date night or something. Like, it just little, I just want them to relate and be able to remember, and remember that message. And the second question, please remind me of that.
Oh, I'm curious if this is a conversation that you find yourself having, especially with the women in your life, but with all people in your life. I just feel like often for women, and specifically for Black and Brown women,
Mhm.
even though we literally legally on the books have passed hair discrimination in this state, which is really, really important,
Right.
it still happens all the time.
Yes.
And often it happens in the form of microaggressions that can be very, very insidious and repeated. Um,
Exactly.
but also like there are all of the aggressions. And I feel like in my work and specifically reporting on young people, I often hear from young people, oh, my teacher said something. Like I heard from a young guy the other day, oh, my teacher said that uh like other students weren't paying attention in class because
Hmm.
they couldn't see over my fro, which I found so offensive and
Wow.
also illegal, like literally illegal. It is illegal in
What?
the state of Connecticut to say that, right? Um, but we know that folks of all ages are still experiencing discrimination. And so
Yes.
I'm wondering if this is a conversation that, of course, you hold very close in your creative work, but also
Mhm.
are taking with you wherever you go.
Yes. So I feel like, obviously not in everyday life, we're talking about our hair and stuff like that. But this, I feel like this conversation definitely comes up in my classroom a lot because I now work with seventh and eighth graders. And, this is around the time where they start wanting to uh, be cute. They start worrying about their hair. They're worrying about lashes and makeup and all of this stuff. So a lot of the times I feel like our young kids that's in the classroom, they tend to kind of self inflict self hate on an everyday basis, like just saying little things like, for example, there's a kid in my class, he has locks, and when his hair isn't, you know, completely retwisted and it's like a little bit of new growth, he's feeling like he just can't come to school without a hat on, or feeling like, just not being able to love his hair at the messy state, quote unquote messy state, or quote unquote nappy state, you know? So just reminding these kids like, hey, don't call your hair nappy. Hey, don't do that. We have coils, we have curls, it's not naps. Like little things like that is I feel like that's how I kind of impact, leave a little impact, you know, on the community on an everyday basis. But that also kind of influenced those little stories and those experiences influence why I want to do Hair Story and why I wanted to put this production on.
Absolutely. I also want to ask just a little bit about what's on the horizon for CA Productions. And fully knowing that your heart and your mind have been invested in Sunday. But I know entrepreneurs are often like, I'm doing this and I'm 110% invested in this thing. And also here's what's on the horizon.
Yes. So on the horizon, definitely look out for another fashion show, July 13th. And I won't spoil the theme, but just know it has to do with water in some way. Okay. Water in some way. So the next show is definitely going to be um July 13th. And we don't have a location yet, but the just save the date. Save the date.
Amazing. Before we go, I want to ask you, specifically, how does it feel? Obviously, when you were planning this, you didn't specifically know what the month of January would hold or what the month of February would
Right.
hold. Um, But how does it feel specifically to be presenting this now? Because I don't know, in New Haven, in Hamden, one of the things I've been so moved by, especially in the past 2 weeks, but before that, even during the election cycle, before the election, um,
Yes.
was folks and especially artists, creatives, entrepreneurs who were looking at how they could plug in and create joy and
Yes.
also have really vital conversations that, frankly, in Washington are trying to be shut down now, right?
Right.
Um, and so clearly, this is a conversation that needs to be happening, especially because, like you said, there might be someone in the audience who is like a young Chasity, or maybe who is older, who still hasn't made peace with themselves, or maybe they have some internalized self-hate going on, right? And they're
Right.
going to see this production and think, oh my gosh, this is really like I feel empowered.
Right.
This is for me. And so I'm wondering how it feels to be sort of like midwifing or shepherding this work right now.
It's a beautiful thing, really. It's so crazy because I feel like um every production I do, I feel like it aligns with the times. It's so crazy. Like my last production, it was called Untamed, and it was just focusing on just Western fashion and that style, how you could change it up from streetwear to more modern to more stylish. So we during that time, Beyonce came out with her Cowboy Carter tour, and it's just like crazy how it aligns. So I feel like every time I do a production, it ends up aligning with the times. And I love, although I hate what's going on right now, I love being able to be that light for our people, and you know, to be that platform that still is encouraging and sharing positivity and love despite all this hate that's going on in the world right now. So it's a beautiful and perfect timing for me to do this and for me to conduct this production, you know.
Yes. And I think it's true. People say this and then they say like, oh, and I'm gonna organize or and I'm gonna do this. But I think that joy is a tool of organizing and it is a tool of resistance.
Yes.
Because there has been, especially in the past 2 weeks, like this effort to just create chaos and wear us down, right? We
Right.
were meant to metabolize this amount of information and traumatic information at that. Um, and so for you to be saying, mm-mm, I refuse that, like I'm refusing that at least for Sunday afternoon,
Right.
and I'm going to push that away. And if you are in this space, I invite you to experience joy and
Yes.
resilience with me, and also to have this conversation around Black hair and around Black and brown hair um,
Yes.
with you. So I actually think that our joy and art making is extremely, extremely important in all times, including in this time. So the last question I usually ask folks is, what have we not talked about that it's really important for you to share with folks who might be listening?
Um, really come out to the show on
Yes,
Sunday.
Sunday at 3
Um,
p.m. at the lab.
yes, ma'am. But really, I feel like we touched bases on everything. I enjoyed this interview so much. Thank you so much, Lucy, again. And follow us on Instagram if you are looking to either model, you're looking to get into backstage, crew, into our backstage crew, or if you are just simply looking to support the cause and support what we do. My Instagram is at c.a productions, at c.a productions.
Amazing. And I have it pulled up right now so I can ask Harry Droz, who is our station manager, to drop that in the audio for this episode. There's also a handy dandy link tree.
Oh, perfect.
If y'all who are listening out there enjoy a link tree, I know I do. And I will ask Harry to share that as well. Chastity Kennedy, I want to thank you so much for joining me on Friday. It's disgusting and dreary outside, but this has injected some like necessary sunlight into my
Yes.
brain, especially this week. So I just thank you for lifting my spirits and for reminding me that there is so much good in the world, especially in the hyper local level. If you are just joining us, you have missed a great interview. Please go back and listen to it. We have been talking about Life in Color, Hair Story, and interactive fashion production that is taking place on Sunday, February 2nd. If you're listening on Friday, January 31st, that is this Sunday. I know that January feels like it has had 89 days this month, but it has not, and it's almost over. It will be on February 2nd at 3 p.m. Doors at 3, show at 4, at the lab at Concorp, which is at 245 Morse Street in Hamden. And is it going to be in I had a friend who called it the Cafe Gymatorium because it's like a cafeteria, it's a gym, it was a theater for a minute. Last
Yep.
Longworth did a production. It's all the things at once. It's kind of great. It has a stage. Um, so it'll be just like down that hallway in that big
Yep. Exactly. Yes, that's
room.
exactly where it will be. Orchid Hall.
Awesome, awesome. And folks can find the ticket link in your link tree, right?
Yes.
Beautiful. Yep, it's the first hit. Um, Great. Chastity Kennedy, thank you so much for joining me on Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. I really appreciate that you've been here. And yeah, and folks, if you're out there and you're like, I don't have something happening on Sunday afternoon, now you do. Uh, Go to this show. You're not going to regret it. Harry Drose,
Yes.
the man behind the magic, thank you for running everything beautifully and making this show possible. Take care, y'all.